Wait for me another 10 minutes. I've already been waiting all day. I stood at the entrance of the Seaside Civil Affairs Bureau, my phone down to 3% battery. On the other end of the call, Crystal sounded rushed. Dylan filled in the form wrong. If this case goes wrong, it'll be a big problem. I stared at the newlyweds taking photos in the distance. Their laughter came in waves. What about us? I asked. She paused for a moment. We can reschedule this. I didn't say anything. The wind was strong, carrying a chill. From 9 in the morning until now, an entire day, I hadn't left this place. She said 10 minutes. I believed her. Then it turned into half an hour, an entire afternoon. Go find somewhere to eat first, she said. I lowered my head and looked at the documents in my hands, the household registration booklet, ID cards, and the ring I had prepared in advance. Are you still coming today? There was a 2-second silence on the other end. I'll try. I let out a small laugh. The first time I heard "I'll try," I made excuses for her. The second time, I started to doubt. And this was the third. Suddenly, I understood something. In her life, I had never been the most important one. Chapter 01. I had been with Crystal for 3 years. She was a practicing lawyer at a well-known law firm in City A, fast-paced, decisive, and always straightforward. I was a project lead at a design company, earning well and with relatively flexible hours. A lot of people said we complemented each other. She charged forward. I smoothed out life behind her. I believed that too, until the day we went to register our marriage for the first time. She picked the date. She said Wednesdays were less crowded, the process would be faster, and it wouldn't interfere with work. I took the day off in advance, put on a shirt, and even got a haircut. The person in the mirror looked clean and sharp, like someone about to start a new life. Her tone over the phone was calm. You go ahead first. I need to handle something here. I'll be there soon. I didn't think much of it. She was always busy. I was used to accommodating her. The Seaside Civil Affairs Bureau in City A sat at the end of a coastal road, a white building, with a windbreak forest beside it, and the sea just beyond. When I arrived, it was only a little past 9. There were already several couples inside. Some held flowers. Some laughed as they took photos. Others quietly discussed wedding details. I stood at the entrance, checked the time, and sent her a message. I'm here. She replied quickly, okay, 10 minutes. So I waited there. 10 minutes passed. 20 minutes passed. I found a seat by the window where I could see the sea outside. The wind was strong, and waves crashed against the rocks again and again. I started scrolling through my phone, checked the workgroup chat for a while, then read a few trivial news articles. She didn't send anything else. I called her. No answer. I frowned and sent another message. Are you here yet? This time, she took a long while to reply. Wait a bit. Dylan filled the form wrong. I need to go back and fix it. I stared at that line for a few seconds. Dylan, the male intern she was mentoring. He had just graduated not long ago. A bit soft in personality, always slightly ingratiating when he spoke, and often messed things up at work. I had seen him twice. Once at the law firm, he stood behind Crystal, holding a stack of files, so nervous he could barely speak properly. The other time, we had dinner together. He kept putting food on Crystal's plate, saying things like, "Thank you, Lawyer Crystal, for guiding me," but his eyes kept drifting toward her. Back then, I just thought he was overly dependent. I didn't think much of it. Now, his name caught in my throat, leaving a faint discomfort. I replied, "How long?" She didn't answer directly. "Soon, just wait a bit." So I waited. From morning to noon, couples in the hall came and went, one batch after another. Some walked out after getting their certificates, smiling brightly as they pulled their partner along to take photos. Others argued quietly at the entrance, their voices low but their emotions obvious. I sat in the corner, like a bystander. At noon, I called her a second time. This time, she picked up. Her voice was hurried. "It's not done yet. This case is urgent. Go find somewhere to eat first." I asked her, "Can we still do it today?" She paused, then said, "I'll try." I almost wanted to laugh at those words. "I'll try," I said. "All right." After hanging up, I went out and casually bought a piece of bread, eating it by the sea. The wind was strong. The bread was dry. It got stuck a little as I swallowed. 2 in the afternoon. 3, 4. The sun began to sink, and the light over the sea slowly dimmed. I sent another message. "Where are you now?" This time, she didn't reply. I didn't call again. My phone battery was nearly dead. I dimmed the screen, trying to save what little was left. There were fewer and fewer people around. The staff began packing up documents. Someone reminded the couples who hadn't finished yet to hurry. I stood in front of the counter, suddenly hesitating. Should I keep waiting? Maybe she would arrive the next second. Maybe she was already on the way. Maybe. My mind kept making excuses for her. She really was busy with work. She was responsible. She was mentoring an intern. If something went wrong, she had to take responsibility. I had been saying these things for 3 years, saying them so often that I was starting to believe them myself. Chapter 02, 5:30. The hall was basically empty. I was the only one left standing there. One of the staff members glanced at me, her tone tinged with sympathy. They probably won't make it today. You can come back another day. I nodded and said thank you. When I walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, it was already getting dark. There were still a few couples by the sea taking photos. Some held flowers. Some leaned against each other, smiling. I walked past them. No one looked at me, but I knew it myself. I looked like a joke. I stood by the sea, watching the last trace of sunset disappear. My phone finally died. At that moment, I felt strangely calm. No anger, no grievance. Just a vague sense that something wasn't right, but I couldn't quite put it into words. On the way back, I sent her one last message. I'm heading off. She took a long time to reply. Sorry, I really couldn't get away today. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I replied, it's fine, natural, composed. Just like every time over the past 3 years. That night, I returned home alone. I placed the prepared documents on the table, ID card, household registration booklet, and the ring I had bought in advance. I opened the ring box, then closed it, over and over again. Finally, I put it in the innermost part of the drawer. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Scenes from the day kept replaying in my mind. The sea breeze, the empty hall, and her words, soon. I began to seriously think about one question. Was she really unable to come? Or did she simply not put this matter first? The moment that thought surfaced, I immediately tried to suppress it. I told myself not to overthink. She had always been like this. Work came first. Everything else came after. That was exactly why I once found her reliable. But now, I suddenly wasn't so sure anymore. That night, I barely slept. It felt like something inside me had cracked open. A very fine fracture. It didn't hurt, but it was always there. After the first failed attempt to register our marriage, Crystal only said one thing. I really couldn't make time that day. She didn't explain further, nor did she mention making it up to me. I nodded and moved the conversation along, as if it had just been an ordinary last-minute change. In the following days, we continued as usual, meeting up, eating together. She would talk on the phone about her cases, about how Dylan messed up the documents again, about how tricky the opposing lawyer was. I listened, responding occasionally. As for that day, she never brought it up again, and neither did I. But that crack never disappeared. The second time we tried to register, it was her idea. This weekend, I've already cleared my schedule. When she said it, her tone was firm, like she was confirming a task already arranged. I looked at her and asked, nothing unexpected will come up this time, right? She frowned, slightly impatient. No, I've already arranged everything. I nodded. This time, I didn't go alone. I told my parents and invited a few close friends. Not for show, just to settle this once and for all. 3 years. It was time for a result. That day, I arrived early at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Not the seaside one, the one in the city. The hall was larger, and there were more people. I checked the entire process in advance, confirmed all the documents, and even took a queue number for her. Relatives and friends gradually arrived. My mom pulled me aside to talk, unable to hide the joy on her face. This time, nothing should go wrong. Her tone was light, but I could hear the probing underneath. I smiled and said, it won't. The moment I said it, I paused slightly myself. Time moved forward bit by bit. 10:30, that was our agreed time. She still hadn't arrived. I sent her a message, where are you? No reply. I called her. After a few rings, it was hung up. Standing in the crowd, I felt a tightening in my chest. A friend came over and patted my shoulder. Don't stress, traffic happens. I nodded. I didn't want anything to seem off in front of them. 10:40, she finally called back. I picked up immediately. Where are you? It was noisy on her end, like she was in the office. Something came up here. My grip on the phone tightened. What happened? She lowered her voice. Dylan got stuck on something. The opposing lawyer is deliberately making things difficult. I need to go back and handle it. I didn't speak for a moment. She continued. Just wait a bit. It'll be quick. How long? I asked. She paused, not giving a clear answer. Not too long. Those words made my chest feel heavy. I glanced around the hall. Everyone was waiting for us. My mom stood to the side, her eyes fixed on the entrance. I lowered my voice. Can we still do it today? She sounded a bit hurried. Yes, don't worry. I didn't say anything more. The call ended. I stood there, my phone still pressed to my ear. Suddenly, all the surrounding sounds became sharp and clear. People laughing, people discussing the process, numbers being called. None of it had anything to do with me. Slowly, I lowered my phone. A friend walked over and asked, is she almost here? I nodded. Something came up. She'll be a bit late. When I said that, I made my tone as natural as possible, as if it were something trivial. Chapter 03. Time kept moving forward. 11 o'clock. 11:20. Our number had already been called. A staff member came over to remind me. Are you still going through with it? You'll need to take a new number. I said. I'll wait a bit longer. He looked at me, then didn't say anything else. Relatives started whispering among themselves. I could catch fragments. Why isn't she here yet? Wasn't there a set time? Did something happen? I didn't want to listen, but the words slipped into my ears anyway. My mom walked over and asked quietly, when exactly is she arriving? My throat tightened a little. She's on the way. She stared at me for 2 seconds and didn't press further, but her expression had already changed. 11:30. The phone rang again. I picked up almost immediately. Are you done? There was a brief silence on her end. Not yet. The other side is being very aggressive. I can't leave right now. It felt like something struck inside my head. You mean, you're still at the firm? Yes. I glanced around the hall. Everyone was there. Everyone except her. How long will it take? I asked. She didn't answer that. Instead, she said, just explain it to them first. The moment those words landed, I felt hollow. Explain. How was I supposed to explain this? I didn't ask anything more. I only said, all right. Then I hung up. Standing there, I suddenly felt cold. Even though we were indoors, the air conditioning normal, there was a chill creeping up my back. A friend walked over. What's going on? I looked at him, wanting to say something, but the words stopped at my lips and were swallowed back. She's dealing with something. She'll be a bit late. I repeated it. This time, even I felt how empty those words sounded. Someone in the crowd laughed. Not loudly, but I heard it clearly. Looks like the bride isn't coming. Another voice followed. Isn't this the second time already? I didn't know if they were saying it on purpose for me to hear, but at that moment, my face felt hot. Not from embarrassment, more like being exposed. Placed under a spotlight with nowhere to hide. My mom's expression completely darkened. She walked up to me, her voice low. Is she coming or not? I didn't answer immediately. I knew the answer, but I didn't want to say it out loud. After a few seconds, I spoke. Maybe, she's not coming. She froze for a moment. The people around us also went quiet for a second. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room. No one spoke. The light, cheerful atmosphere from before vanished instantly. I stood in the middle of the crowd, still clutching the stack of documents. The edges were slightly crumpled from how tightly I had been gripping them. People started packing up. Some found excuses to leave. A friend patted my shoulder, saying nothing. In a situation like this, nothing would be appropriate. I watched them walk away one by one, like watching a scene that was supposed to belong to me slowly disperse. In the end, only my mom and I were left. She didn't say anything more. She just sighed. It was a soft sound, but it pressed on my chest until it felt hard to breathe. I lowered my head and looked at the documents in my hands. ID card, household registration booklet, and the appointment slip. Everything was ready. All the procedures set. The only thing missing was her. I packed the documents away, slowly, as if I were trying to delay something, but I knew very clearly. This time, it wasn't a matter of time. When I walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, the sunlight was bright. I squinted. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I didn't take it out immediately. I already knew who it was, and I could guess what it said. I stood at the entrance, not moving. The scenes from just now replayed in my mind. Those looks, those whispered comments, and her words, just explain it to them. Suddenly, I understood something. In her world, there were things that had to be handled first, and I had never been at the top of that list. Finally, I took out my phone. The screen lit up. She had sent one message. Sorry, it's more complicated than I expected here. I stared at that line for a few seconds. I didn't reply immediately. My finger hovered over the screen, but I couldn't press down. Chapter 04. I didn't reply to that sorry. The phone rested in my palm for a moment before I turned off the screen and slipped it back into my pocket. The crowd had mostly dispersed. At the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, only a few scattered couples remained, along with some newlyweds who had just come out to take photos. I stood there for a while, then turned and left. This time, no one looked at me, no one laughed, but that feeling of being put on display in front of everyone still clung to me, impossible to shake off. Back at my place, I put the documents on the table, the same spot as last time, only this time, there was an extra, an appointment slip, creased from being folded. I sat on the couch without turning on the lights. The room was quiet. My phone lit up, then went dark again. She sent a few more messages. I didn't read them. I could already guess what they said. Explanations, apologies, and another line about how she really couldn't get away. I had heard those words too many times. At 9 that night, she called. I watched the screen flash for a long time before finally picking up. It was quiet on her end, like she had just finished work. Did you get home? Yeah, I answered. She paused, then said, things got a bit complicated today. The other side changed their strategy last minute. Dylan couldn't handle it. so I had to stay. She spoke in a professional, composed tone, like she was reviewing a case. I leaned back on the couch, listening, not interrupting. She continued, I know today wasn't ideal, but if this case goes wrong, it'll affect everything down the line. I looked at the documents on the table and suddenly asked, what about us? She fell silent for a moment. We can schedule another time. She said it so naturally, like rescheduling a meeting. I didn't respond right away. The only sound in the room was the faint rustle of papers from her side. After a few seconds, I said, okay. She seemed to let out a breath of relief. I'll wrap things up here as soon as possible, and then we'll set another time. The call ended. The entire conversation had no argument, no emotional outburst. It was calm, as if nothing had happened. I stayed where I was, unmoving. After a while, I got up and turned on the lights. White light flooded the room instantly. The documents on the table looked especially neat. I walked over and smoothed out the appointment slip. The date on it had already expired. I stared at those numbers for a while. They suddenly felt unfamiliar. In the following days, things between us went back to how they were before. She stayed busy with her cases. I stayed busy with my projects. Occasionally, she would text to ask if I had eaten. Her tone no different from before. I would reply. On the surface, nothing had changed, but something had already shifted out of place. The third time was her suggestion. This Wednesday, 9 in the morning. I've already confirmed my schedule. When she said it, her tone was more direct than before, like she was presenting a final plan. I looked at her and didn't agree immediately. She frowned. Do you have something else planned? No. Then it's this time. After saying that, she added, there won't be any problems this time. I nodded. I didn't ask anything more. This time, I didn't tell anyone. No relatives, no friends. I only brought the documents and the ring. I didn't want to go through that kind of scene again. That day, I arrived early. The hall wasn't big, and there weren't many people. I found a seat by the side and sat down, the documents resting on my lap. Time passed little by little. 9 o'clock sharp. She didn't show up. I didn't send a message. I just looked up at the entrance. People came in. People left. Not her. 9:10. 9:20. I took out my phone and checked. No unread messages. I didn't call. My finger hovered over the screen. Then I put it down. 9:30. Her call finally came in. I answered. Her voice was a little rushed. Are you there yet? I'm here. Something came up on my side. I closed my eyes for a moment. I had already heard those words twice. What happened? I asked. She said, Dylan's documents were sent to the wrong place. We have to prepare a new set. I need to supervise it. I didn't respond. She continued, just wait for me a bit. I'll handle it as soon as I can. How long? I asked. She paused. Not too long. Hearing those words, I suddenly felt a sense of familiarity. Familiar, and almost grating. Chapter 05. There were people whispering in the hall. Staff members were organizing documents. Everything was normal. Only me, like I was stuck in a scene on repeat. I looked at the entrance and suddenly didn't want to wait anymore. I stood up and gathered my documents. The movement was clean, decisive, no hesitation. On the other end, she was still speaking. Don't leave yet. I'll be right. I cut her off. No need. She froze for a moment. What do you mean? I took out the ring box and held it in my palm. My voice was steady. You don't need to come. There was a 2-second silence. Fernando, what are you talking about? For the first time, there was a clear fluctuation in her tone. I looked at the glass doors of the hall. The light outside was a bit harsh. Let's end this. When I said it, there was no surge of emotion like I had imagined. Instead, it felt light, as if something had finally settled. She went quiet for a few seconds. Then her voice dropped. Are you just being emotional? I didn't answer that. I only said, don't come. Her tone grew urgent. Wait for me. I'll finish up and come over right now. We'll talk in person. I pulled the phone away from my ear and glanced at the call screen. Then I hung up. Someone in the hall glanced at me. I didn't stop. As I reached the entrance, a staff member called out, Are you not going through with it? I didn't turn back. I just raised my hand in a small wave. The air outside was a little cold. I stood on the steps and took a deep breath. My chest felt neither heavy nor empty, just quiet. My phone rang again almost immediately. She called several times in a row. I didn't pick up. Messages popped up one after another. I didn't open them. I didn't need to. I already knew what they said. Explanations, attempts to make things right, and another, wait for me. But this time, I didn't want to wait anymore. I walked to the roadside and put the ring box away again, deep inside my bag. After finishing that motion, I paused. Fragments from the past 3 years flashed through my mind. Her working late into the night, me bringing her food, her being in a bad mood, me walking with her for hours, her saying work was stressful, me handling the small things in life for her. Each scene passed by. No resentment, no anger, just clarity. I set my phone to silent. Then I walked forward, without looking back. I didn't return her calls. After that day, I muted her notifications, leaving only the most basic alerts. Occasionally, my phone would light up. I would glance at it, but not open it. She texted frequently. At first, it was explanations. The issue with the documents has been resolved. That day really was an emergency. We can set another time. Her tone was still the same, rational, structured, like she was handling a postponed task. I didn't respond. The next day, she changed her approach. Fernando, pick up. Let's talk. This kind of silence doesn't solve anything. We can work this out. I still didn't reply. I wasn't being petty, nor was I trying to force her to give in. It just felt like there was no need to explain anything anymore. On the third day, her tone began to unravel. Where are you? Did you go back to the office? I went to your place. You're not there. She even sent a photo of the entrance to my place. The door was closed. I glanced at it, then turned off the screen. I had already started preparing to leave. The resignation process wasn't complicated. I had been at the company for several years, delivered solid projects. My manager tried to persuade me to stay. Is it because of work pressure? We can adjust things. I shook my head. Personal reasons. He looked at me, as if wanting to say more, but in the end just nodded. Let me know if you need anything. I acknowledged him. The whole process went smoothly. No one asked too many questions. On the day I packed up, I moved quickly. Documents on the desk were sorted into categories. Personal belongings went into boxes. A colleague helped me on the side. Someone asked, moving to another city? Yeah. Where to? I told them the name. They nodded, saying there were plenty of opportunities there. The conversation was light, like an ordinary resignation. Chapter 06. That night, when I got back to my place, I packed up the last of my things. The room felt much emptier. The table, the sofa, and the curtains I had never changed. I stood at the doorway and looked around once. There was no sense of attachment, just the feeling that what needed to end had already ended. My phone rang again. This time, I glanced at it. It was her. I hesitated for a second, then answered. On the other end, her breathing was slightly uneven. Why aren't you picking up my calls? I leaned against the doorframe, not sitting down. What is it? That question caught her off guard. Her tone changed immediately. What have you been doing these past few days? Handling some things. What things? I didn't answer. She went quiet for a few seconds. Then her voice softened. Are you avoiding me? No. Then why won't you see me? I looked at the suitcase on the floor and said calmly, there's no need. The moment those words came out, her side fell silent. When she spoke again, her voice was much softer. Fernando, let's talk. I didn't agree, and I didn't refuse. She continued, about that day, I can explain everything. You already did. I cut her off. Not on that level, she said, a hint of urgency in her voice. It's not that I don't value you. It's just that at the time, the situation. I didn't let her finish. Crystal, I rarely called her by her name like that. She stopped. You don't need to say anything more. On the other end, there was a faint sound of her breathing. It seemed like she wanted to speak, but couldn't. I spoke slowly. This has already happened 3 times. Not once. Not an accident. She didn't argue. Just silence. I continued. You have your choices, and I have mine. After those words, she finally spoke. Are you breaking up with me? I didn't answer directly, but the silence itself said everything. Her side suddenly grew anxious. Don't do this. We can adjust. I can rearrange my work. This won't happen again. She spoke quickly, like she was trying to hold on to something slipping away. I listened without interrupting. When she finished, I finally spoke. You've said that before. She froze. I didn't continue. There was a soft intake of breath on her end, like she was trying to steady her emotions. For the first time, she didn't respond immediately. After a few seconds, she asked, then what do you want? I looked out the window. Lights flickered on one after another. I already told you. She didn't reply. This time, she truly understood. The call ended abruptly. She didn't keep pressing. She only said, I'll come find you. Then she hung up. I placed my phone aside and didn't look at it again. The next day, I left City A. I didn't have much luggage, just a suitcase and a backpack. Standing at the station, I didn't inform anyone, and I didn't look back. I had lived in this city for many years, from graduation until now. Almost every important milestone of my life had happened here, including her. By the time I arrived in the new city, it was already night. I found a temporary place to stay and tidied up a little. The room wasn't big, but it was clean. Outside the window was a different rhythm of streets, unfamiliar, but not noisy. I sat at the edge of the bed and took out my phone. Once the signal came back, messages flooded in. Most of them were from her. The intervals between them grew shorter and shorter, from hours apart at first, to minutes apart later. The content had changed, too. No longer explanations, just questions. Where are you? Did you leave City A? Just tell me. I looked at those messages, my finger hovering over the screen. In the end, I still didn't reply. Chapter 07. In the following days, she started trying to reach me through other ways. She found one of my friends. When he called me, his tone was a little awkward. She asked where you are. I didn't tell her. I said, don't. He paused, then nodded. Got it. Another day passed, and my mom called. She rarely brought this up directly, but this time she didn't avoid it. She came to see me. I didn't say anything. She asked where you went. I didn't tell her. I responded with a quiet acknowledgement. My mom paused, her tone slower than usual. Did something happen between you two? It's already dealt with. She didn't ask for details. She just let out a sigh. I finalized my new job. The pace wasn't fast, but it was clear. Each day had a simple, direct structure. No sudden changes. No need to accommodate anyone else's schedule. After work, I would walk around the nearby streets alone. They were unfamiliar, but quiet. I realized I had stopped checking my phone so often, and I was no longer waiting for any message. A week later, her call came again. This time, I answered. Her voice was low, a little hoarse. Fernando, did you already leave? I looked out the window and said calmly, yeah. She fell silent for a long time, so long that I thought she had hung up. Then she asked, which city are you in? I didn't answer. She asked again. There was a hint of urgency in her tone. I still didn't respond. Her breathing grew heavier. If you don't tell me, how am I supposed to find you? The words were direct, but to me, they felt unfamiliar. I said, there's no need to look for me. She froze, as if she hadn't expected that answer. After a few seconds, her voice softened. Fernando, give me another chance. It was the first time she spoke like that. No analysis, no reasoning, just a request. I didn't respond immediately. I just looked at the distant lights, flickering on one by one. Then I said, no. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. I didn't expect her to find me anyway. That day was Saturday. I had just come back from the supermarket, carrying a small bag of groceries. The hallway was quiet. My footsteps echoed clearly. When I reached the door, I saw someone standing there. Her back was facing me. Her hair was slightly messy, her shoulders tense, like she had been standing there for a long time. I paused. Hearing the movement, she turned around. It was Crystal. She looked different from before. Her makeup was light, almost unfinished. Her clothes were still in her usual style, but without that sharp, polished edge. She stared at me, her gaze briefly unfocused before tightening again. You're finally back. Her voice was a little dry. I didn't step closer. I didn't open the door. I just stood there, looking at her. How did you find this place? She didn't answer immediately, as if she was organizing her thoughts. I asked around. I knew who she meant. She had more resources than I did. This kind of thing wasn't difficult for her. There was a short distance between us. She took a step forward, then stopped, like she was testing my reaction. I didn't move. The atmosphere was tense. She spoke first. Can we go inside and talk? I glanced at the bag in my hand, then took out the key. When the door opened, she instinctively walked in. The movement was natural, like countless times before, but this time, I stayed at the doorway, not following. She took a couple of steps before realizing I hadn't moved. She stopped and turned back to look at me. I said, go ahead. She stood in the middle of the living room, glancing around. The space was small, simply furnished. Her gaze lingered for a moment, then returned to me. Why didn't you tell me you came here? I set my things aside, not answering the question. What did you come here for? She froze for a moment, as if she hadn't expected me to be so direct. She took a breath. We need to talk. I nodded. Go ahead. She went silent for a few seconds, like she was searching for the right way to begin. About those 3 times, I can explain. I didn't interrupt. She continued. The first time, Dylan filled out the form wrong. If that case went wrong, it would have affected the client's interests. The second time, the opposing lawyer deliberately made things difficult. I had to go back. The third time, she paused, as if even she felt the repetition of her own reasoning. I looked at her, expressionless. Her voice gradually lowered. It's not that I don't care about you, I asked. Then what is it? Chapter 08. She didn't answer immediately. The room fell into a brief silence. She stepped a little closer. It's a matter of priorities. She said it slowly, as if admitting something. I looked at her. She continued. I always thought these things could be adjusted. Once work was done, we would still have time, but I didn't realize that for you. Those moments themselves were important. Her tone was no longer firm. It sounded more like she was reviewing a process that had gone out of control. I listened without responding right away. I walked to the table, poured a glass of water. When I handed it to her, she took it. Her fingers were a little cold. I sat on the other side, not getting any closer. So now you realize it, I said. She nodded. Yes. I asked. Out of those 3 times, was there ever a moment, before you left, when you thought about how I would feel. Her fingers tightened slightly. The water in the glass rippled. She didn't speak. She couldn't answer that question. I didn't press further. I just continued. Every time, you said soon. Every time, you made me wait. And in the end, it was always me who had to wrap things up. My tone wasn't heavy, but every word was clear. She lowered her head, not interrupting. She set the glass down, then looked up at me. Her eyes were slightly red, but she didn't cry. I've already rearranged my work. There was a hint of urgency in her voice. I've handed Dylan over to someone else. I won't personally handle his matters anymore. This won't happen again. She said it all in one breath, like presenting a solution. I listened, then nodded, and then. She froze. What do you mean? And then. I looked at her. You're making these changes so there won't be problems again. Or because you think this relationship is worth doing this for. She opened her mouth, but didn't answer immediately. That question stopped her. She was used to solving problems, but not to answering something without a clear answer. After a moment, she said, both. I didn't comment. I just nodded. She looked at me, her tone turning slightly urgent again. Fernando, I'm already changing. You can't stay stuck in the past. I smiled a little, faintly. I'm not stuck in the past. When I said that, my voice was calm. I've just moved on. Her expression froze, as if she didn't understand, or understood too well. She stared at me, her gaze unsteady. What do you mean? I didn't avoid it. It means this relationship is over. Her breathing visibly stopped for a moment. She took a step forward. I don't agree. The words came out immediately. Her tone was much firmer than before. I didn't step back. I didn't argue. I just looked at her. She seemed to realize her tone, paused, then lowered her voice again. We've been together for 3 years. It's not something that ends with a single sentence. I nodded. It's not just one sentence. It's 3 times. When those words landed, she seemed frozen in place. She didn't move, didn't speak. The air in the room turned still. After a while, she spoke again. Her voice was very low. Do you really feel nothing for me now? I looked at her, not answering immediately. That question was more direct than the others, and left no room to maneuver. I didn't say anything harsh. I just said, it doesn't matter anymore. Her gaze flickered, as if something had pierced through her. She stood there, no longer stepping closer, no longer offering explanations. She just looked at me. The way she looked at me now was different from before. No longer certain. There was a trace of unease. Time passed for a while. Finally, she spoke. I won't give up. She said it slowly. No urgency, no force. Like she was giving herself a direction. I didn't respond. She turned and walked toward the door. Halfway there, she stopped. She turned back and looked at me. I'll come find you again. I didn't nod. I didn't refuse. I just stood there, watching her open the door and walk out. Chapter 09. The moment the door closed, the room fell quiet again. I stood where I was, not moving right away. The conversation from just now replayed in my mind. There was no surge of emotion, no hesitation. I walked over and picked up the glass of water from the table. She had only drunk half. A little remained. I poured it out and rinsed the glass clean. The motion felt natural, like handling something ordinary. A faint sound of running water echoed in the kitchen. Light filtered in from outside, falling across the floor. I took out the ingredients and started cooking. The rhythm of the knife against the cutting board was steady. No interruptions. No one to wait for. After Crystal left, she didn't show up again immediately. True to her word, she didn't disturb me frequently. Occasionally, there would be 1 or 2 messages, short and simple. Have you been okay lately? Do you have time to talk? I didn't reply. Those words meant nothing to me now. My work in the new city gradually fell into place. The company wasn't large, but the project flow was clear, communication straightforward. The first project I handled went smoothly, and the client's feedback was good. Relationships between colleagues were simple, without complicated entanglements. It made everything feel lighter. Half a month later, I received a call. It was a former client from City A. Their tone was polite. Fernando, we have a project here. We'd like you to come back and assist. It won't take long, and compensation is negotiable. I had intended to refuse, but the project they mentioned was a continuation of one I had previously worked on. Many details were only known to me. After some consideration, I agreed. The day I returned to City A, I didn't inform anyone. My schedule was tight, leaving almost no spare time. The project meeting was held in a commercial office building. I arrived early and prepared my materials. When I pushed open the meeting room door, I saw 2 people, Crystal and Dylan. The air seemed to freeze for a moment. Crystal stood by the table, holding a file. When she saw me, she clearly froze. Dylan sat to the side. His gaze landed on me briefly, then quickly shifted away. His reaction was faster than hers, almost as if he had expected this. Why are you here? Crystal spoke first. There was a trace of emotion in her tone she couldn't fully hide. I placed my documents on the table, my voice neutral. The project requires it. She nodded and didn't ask further. The meeting began quickly. Throughout, Dylan was serious, more composed than before, speaking with clearer structure, but I noticed, when he looked at me, there was always a hint of tension in his eyes, as if he were guarding against something. After the meeting, people gradually left. I packed up my materials, ready to go. Crystal walked over. "When did you get back?" "Today," she nodded, then asked, "How long are you staying?" "Until the project's done." She looked at me, as if wanting to say more, but someone called her from the side, and she had to stop. As I walked out of the meeting room, Dylan followed. His pace matched mine, walking alongside me. "Nando," he called out. That nickname surprised me. He rarely spoke to me proactively before. I paused and looked at him. He smiled, but it was a bit stiff. "I heard you're doing well now." I didn't respond to that. "Do you need something?" He hesitated. "No, just saying hi." I nodded and was about to leave. He added, "Hope to learn from you in the future." He said it lightly, but I caught something else beneath it. Over the next 2 days, I focused on the project. Everything progressed smoothly, without issues, until the third day. A rumor suddenly spread within the company. Someone had reported that I accepted improper benefits during the project. The news spread quickly and concentratedly. The person in charge called me in directly. In the meeting room, the atmosphere wasn't tense, but serious. "Someone reported that you accepted something you shouldn't have at a critical stage." His tone was calm. I sat across from him, not rushing to defend myself. "Which part specifically?" He pushed a set of documents toward me, several communication records, and a transfer screenshot. The timing was precise, right at a key stage of the project. The amount wasn't large, but enough to raise suspicion. I finished reading and looked up. "Who provided these materials?" He didn't give a name. "Still under verification." I nodded. "All right, I'll cooperate." After leaving the meeting room, I didn't immediately confront anyone. Instead, I returned to my desk and reviewed every related process again. Every timeline, every handover. I pulled up each record on my computer. The more I reviewed, the clearer it became. The problem wasn't on my end, but these materials had clearly been pieced together deliberately. Chapter 10. I started thinking back on the people I had interacted with recently. The list wasn't long, and the number of people who could access those details was even smaller. Dylan's name surfaced naturally, not intuition. Details. He had been involved in several key steps, and he had access to the original materials. I didn't act immediately. Instead, I organized all the information I had. Then, I went to find him. He was in a meeting room, sorting through documents. When he saw me walk in, he visibly froze for a moment. "Nando, what's up?" I closed the door. "Let's talk." He nodded, but his movements slowed slightly. I didn't bring up the report directly. I asked casually, "Busy with the project lately?" He smiled. "It's all right." I nodded. "Those documents from before, you were the one who organized them." His eyes flickered. "Yeah. Do you have backups?" "Yes," he answered quickly. I looked at him, saying nothing. The room fell silent for a moment. He grew a bit uneasy, lowering his head to sort the papers again. His fingers became slightly disordered. I spoke. "That transfer record, have you seen it?" His hands stopped. He looked up at me. His expression changed noticeably. "What transfer?" I didn't explain. I just looked at him. His throat moved slightly. "I'm not sure what you're talking about." His tone was firmer than before. I nodded. Didn't press further. "All right, then forget it." I turned to leave. Just as I reached the door, he suddenly spoke. "Nando." I stopped. Didn't turn around. His voice was low. "Some things aren't as simple as you think." I turned back and glanced at him. He stood there, his face a little pale, but his gaze was steady. I didn't respond. I opened the door and walked out. After that, I began reconstructing the evidence in reverse, not to prove my innocence, but to uncover how the other party had done it. The origin of every document, every inconsistency in timing. I matched each detail one by one. Very quickly, a complete chain emerged. That transfer screenshot had been fabricated, but the person who made it had referenced real timestamps, which meant they had access to the original records. I printed out everything I had compiled, a thick stack, then submitted it to the project lead. "This is my explanation." My tone was calm. He flipped through the documents for a while, his brow slowly furrowing. "How did you piece all of this together?" he asked. "The original records are all there." I gestured toward the documents. "Just cross-check them." He nodded, not saying anything further, but I could tell he had already formed a judgment. That night, the company held an emergency internal meeting. Everyone involved was present. I sat to one side, not speaking. The documents lay on the table in front of me, waiting for things to unfold. Chapter 11. The lights in the meeting room were bright. Both sides of the table were filled: project lead, legal, finance, and everyone involved in key parts of the process. I sat off to the side, the stack of compiled materials in front of me. No one spoke. The atmosphere was heavy. The project lead spoke first. "We've called everyone here today because an issue has come up in the project." His tone was steady, but every word was clear. "Regarding the report that Fernando accepted improper benefits, we've conducted a preliminary investigation." As he spoke, his gaze swept across the room. Finally, it landed on Dylan and lingered for a moment. Dylan sat across from me, his back straight. His hands rested on the table, knuckles slightly pale. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at the project lead either. His eyes were fixed on a single point on the table. The project lead pushed a set of documents to the center. "These are the materials provided by the reporting party. Transfer records, message screenshots, and several communication logs." He paused, but after verifying them against the original data, there are clear inconsistencies. There was a faint rustling in the room. People lowered their heads to review the documents. I didn't move. I had already seen all of it. The project lead continued. "We compared back-end records with the actual workflow and found discrepancies in the timestamps. Some of the screenshots have been altered and don't match the original data." At this point, he took out another stack. "This is the analysis provided by Fernando." The documents were distributed. The sound of pages turning filled the room. Some people began whispering quietly. The atmosphere began to shift. I looked up at Dylan. He finally lifted his head. His face was even paler than before, but he was still holding himself together, not speaking. The project lead looked at him, still calm. "These materials show clear signs of fabrication in the report, and the person who provided them is very familiar with the internal workflow." At this point, there was no need to name anyone. Everyone's gaze slowly converged in one direction. Dylan's breathing became audible. He opened his mouth, as if to speak, but no sound came out. The legal representative spoke. "We've conducted a preliminary check on the relevant devices. Some of the files were generated on the same terminal and then edited." His tone was cold, completely emotionless. The project lead nodded. "That terminal belongs to the project team." He paused, then said, "We have records of who used it." The air tightened instantly. No one spoke. All the pieces were already connected. Only the final step remained. The project lead looked at Dylan. "Do you have anything to explain?" The question was direct. No buffer. No room to evade. Dylan sat there, his body stiffening. After a few seconds, he forced out a sentence. "I'm not very clear about this situation." His voice was tense, completely different from before. The project lead didn't immediately refute him. He simply pushed a record toward him. "These are your login records on that terminal. The timestamps match the file creation times." Dylan glanced down. His fingers trembled slightly, but he held on. "At that time, I was organizing documents. Maybe someone took advantage of it." By the time he said that, his words were already unraveling. The logic didn't hold. I watched him, saying nothing. He was finally trying to find a way out, but there was none left. The legal representative added, "We also retrieved the operation logs. The modification path of the files is continuous. No interruptions." The meaning was clear. There was no room for the excuse of being set up. Dylan's expression changed completely. He stared at the documents, as if trying to find a loophole, but the more he looked, the more his breathing grew uneven. No one in the room spoke up for him. Everyone was waiting for him to speak for himself. After a few seconds, he suddenly looked up. There was a hint of panic in his eyes. "This is all a misunderstanding." He spoke quickly. "I just wanted to organize things more clearly. I didn't expect it to turn into this." Chapter 12. The project lead didn't respond to that. He just kept looking at him. That silence carried more pressure than any rebuttal. Dylan began speaking faster and faster. "I didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to do a good job. Maybe something went wrong in the process." By now, his voice was starting to lose coherence. I finally spoke. "What about the transfer record?" I pushed the screenshot toward him. "Was this also something you organized?" He glanced at the paper. His eyes flickered. He didn't answer immediately. I didn't give him room to avoid it. "The timing, the amount, the account, it's all very precise. You're just an intern. You don't have that level of access. How did you manage it?" The moment those words landed, he froze. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Someone in the room let out a quiet breath. The atmosphere had already shifted. At that moment, the door opened. Crystal walked in. She seemed to have just rushed over from another meeting, still holding documents in her hand. When she saw the scene, she paused. Her gaze moved between Dylan and me. The project lead gave a brief explanation. "We're verifying the report." She nodded and stepped to the side, not interrupting. When Dylan saw her, it was like he had grabbed onto something. His eyes lit up instantly. "Lawyer Crystal, you know about this, right?" There was urgency in his voice, even a hint of expectation. Crystal froze for a moment. "Know what?" He leaned forward slightly. These materials, I organized them according to your instructions. The moment those words came out, the room fell silent. Crystal's expression changed immediately. What are you talking about? Her tone turned cold. Dylan didn't seem to notice. He kept going. You said before that the process needed to be clearer, that the issues should stand out more. I just followed that idea when I organized everything. He spoke faster and faster, as if trying to prove something. I watched the scene without saying a word. He was already losing control. Crystal stared at him, her brows tightly furrowed. I told you to organize materials, not to fabricate evidence. Her voice was low, but heavy. Dylan froze, as if he hadn't expected that response. I didn't fabricate anything. His words stopped, because even he couldn't finish that sentence. The project lead tapped the table lightly. The evidence is already clear. We'll proceed according to protocol. That statement was essentially a conclusion. There was no more room for explanation. Dylan's face drained of all color. He sat there, looking like he had collapsed inward. After a few seconds, he suddenly let out a laugh. A stiff, unnatural laugh. Then he looked at Crystal. There was something strange in his gaze now. So now you're denying it? His voice wasn't loud, but every word was clear. Crystal's expression froze instantly. What do you mean? He stared at her, the hint of a smile turning cold. You always told me to learn more, do more, said you wanted me to become independent as soon as possible. Whenever I messed up, you would fix it for me, I thought. He paused, as if swallowing something heavy. I thought you were on my side. When those words fell, the air felt compressed. Crystal stood there, frozen, no reaction. In that moment, she finally understood what he had been thinking, and how everything had led to this point. Her fingers tightened slowly, the documents in her hand creased. Her face turned pale, little by little. I looked at her. She didn't look at me. Her gaze stayed on Dylan, and for the first time, there was a trace of loss of control in her eyes. The meeting ended quickly. The follow-up process was handed over to the company. When Dylan was taken away, he didn't say another word. He looked like he had lost all support. People gradually left, until only Crystal and I remained in the room. She stood there, unmoving, as if she hadn't fully come back from what just happened. After a few seconds, she spoke. Her voice was soft. You saw through it a long time ago, didn't you? I didn't answer. I simply gathered the materials on the table. She looked at me. There was something new in her eyes. No longer that sense of control she used to have, but a kind of belated clarity. These 3 years, she started to speak, then stopped. The rest of the words never came out. Chapter 13. After the meeting room door closed, the hallway returned to silence. The lights cast a cold white glow on the floor. No warmth. Crystal was still standing there. She didn't leave, as if waiting for me to say something. I packed up the documents, aligned them neatly, and placed them into the folder. My movements were unhurried. I was used to this pace now. She looked at me and finally spoke. Fernando. Her voice was soft, softer than any time before. I glanced at her, didn't respond. She took a step forward. What just happened? I didn't expect it to turn out like this. When she said that, there was no analytical tone. It sounded more like she was stating a result she couldn't accept. I didn't comment. Words like that didn't change anything now. She seemed to realize that too, and paused. Then she said, I always thought I was handling things properly. Her voice dropped slightly. Everything, including you, including work. I looked at her. Her expression was no longer sharp. That habitual sense of control had been torn open by what just happened. What remained underneath was something unfamiliar to her. Unsteady. She continued. I thought I could balance it, but in reality, I was just pushing things back. Her throat tightened slightly as she spoke. Her voice faltered for a moment. I didn't respond. I simply closed the folder. For me, this kind of realization came too late. She watched my movements, suddenly growing anxious. Fernando, I know where the problem is. I know what I did wrong. Her words came faster, like she was holding on to one last chance. I looked at her. Her eyes were red, but she didn't cry. It's not that I don't care about you. She repeated it, even softer this time. I know, I said. That answer caught her off guard. She hadn't expected it. I continued. You just never put me first. My tone was calm, no emotion. Her fingers tightened slightly, as if those words pressed down on her. She wanted to argue, but she had no reason to. Silence settled between us. Occasionally, someone walked past in the hallway, but no one stopped. She took a deep breath. Then what about now? She asked. Her voice was quiet. Is there still any chance? She had asked this before, but this time, her tone was different. No testing, no reasoning, just a direct question about the outcome. I didn't answer immediately. I looked at her. Her expression was open. No defenses, no preparation for the answer. I said, no. Her gaze froze, as if that single word locked her in place. There was no emotional outburst. She just went still, After a few seconds, she spoke again. You're really not leaving any room at all. I didn't reply. She continued. 3 years, just like that. I looked at her. It didn't end today. The moment I said that, her breathing paused. She understood what I meant. Those 3 times, each one took something away, until there was nothing left. She didn't ask further. She just lowered her head, looking at the floor, as if trying to re-understand everything that had happened. After a while, she looked up again. Her gaze was clearer than before. I won't give up, she said. Her tone wasn't strong, but it was firm. I didn't argue. I didn't respond. That kind of persistence didn't mean anything to me anymore. She looked at me, as if she still had something to say, but in the end, she just nodded, then turned and left. I didn't follow. I didn't watch her walk away. I picked up the folder and headed in the opposite direction. The project wrapped up quickly. The handover process was smooth. Without further issues, I organized all the materials and handed them over to the contact. No delays. Chapter 14. On my last day before leaving City A, I went to a cafe I used to visit often. The place hadn't changed, but the people had. I sat by the window and ordered the most ordinary coffee. No one recognized me. No one brought up the past. It felt clean. My phone vibrated. I glanced at it. It was Crystal. Are you still in City A? I didn't reply. A moment later, another message came. I'm at your old place. I looked at the line for a second, then turned my phone face down on the table, and didn't look at it again. In the evening, I left the cafe. The streets were crowded, lights turning on one by one. With my simple luggage in hand, I walked toward the station. When I arrived, the timing was just right. I took out my ticket and entered. Everything went smoothly. No one stopped me. No one came to see me off. Before boarding, I glanced at my phone one last time. She had sent many messages. The intervals between them were short. The last one had come just minutes ago. Where are you? I didn't reply. I simply put my phone on silent. The train doors closed. My seat was by the window. I put my luggage away and sat down. The lights outside slowly drifted backward. When the train started moving, I didn't look back. This time, there was no hesitation at all. A new city was waiting for me. A new life had already begun. Later, I met someone. She was straightforward in how she did things, direct in how she spoke. No guessing. No need for constant reassurance. Being with her felt easy. We ate together, handled small daily things together. No deliberate planning. No repeated testing. The rhythm felt natural. One day, we were talking outside a restaurant. She was explaining a small issue from work, her tone serious. I was listening. Not far away, someone stopped. I instinctively looked over. It was Crystal. She stood there, didn't come closer, didn't speak. She just watched us. She looked better than the last time I saw her. Her appearance had returned to its usual sharpness, but her eyes were different. The certainty was gone. She looked at me for a while, then glanced at the person beside me, as if confirming something. I didn't walk over. I didn't greet her. I just stayed where I was. In the end, she didn't approach. She turned and left. Her back was straight, but her steps were a little slow. The person beside me asked, "Someone you know?" I said, "An old friend." She nodded, didn't ask more. We continued our conversation, as if nothing had happened. At that moment, I understood very clearly. Some relationships, once they reach their end, never turn back. Not because they're forgotten, but because they're no longer needed.